Welcome to All Right in Sin City, a podcast about writers and writing in the Windsor, Detroit region. Your podcasters today are
Irene Moore Davis, author, educator, and local historian.
Kim Conklin, Windsor-based writer and filmmaker.
and me, Sarah Jarvis, former bookseller, publishing rep, and literary festival chair. This recording takes place at the welcoming Gertrude's Writing Room on the grounds of the historic Willestead Manor in Windsor. Many thanks to author and workshop facilitator Vanessa Shields for welcoming us to this very cool space. Our guest today has taken his fascinating family history and turned it into something quite magical, made of poetry and song. If you were to write about your family history, what form would it take? Poetry, nonfiction, drama, theater of the absurd?
I think that I would probably make it take a variety of forms. I mean, nonfiction would be one of them because there are some legit things that people should know about all of our families. But I think theater of the absurd would be lots of fun. I think a comic book featuring my mother and or grandmother would be lots of fun. Possibly an illustrated children's dictionary of terms that only my family understands, which I can't say online or on the air. That would be a lot of fun, and possibly some poetry. I did write a poem about my grandmother recently, and I think it's hilarious. I'm going to find out soon what other people think of it, but I think that, family history is so much a part of us that it can take a variety of forms, the way that we convey it. And certainly dream narratives are another way that my family appears pretty frequently. And I appreciate the hauntings that I have at night with the people that have gone on.
Fantastic. My mom was very into amateur drama. So I think that our story would be a very wordy, Edwardian, early, 20th century play. And it would go on, and it would be very thoughtful and not have a whole lot of killing and sex and drama, but it would have a whole lot of semi-philosophical background, I think. Yeah, which, is kind of a thought. What about you, Kim?
Well, my family history, I don't know. I would like it to be something more like, Brecht or, maybe Midnight's Children. But I have a feeling it would wind up being more like Steinbeck or something, So, but my personal history, I do actually hope to write someday. And the first part would be, Confessions of a Teenage TV Producer. So I'm hoping that'd be something more like Bridget Jones' Diary with maybe a little less sex. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see how that goes.
I think my mother wanted to have a family history a bit like How Green Was My Valley. It's a drama set in the Welsh mines, and she kind of related to that village scene. So that might have been an early black and white film as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I feel like my family history would also make a pretty good sitcom, like positioned somewhere between like Brideshead Revisited and Good Times. And I can just picture my grandmother being at the center of that, and possibly a musical as well. She was very dramatic and very musical, and she liked to dance whether she could or not. So today we have Teajai Travis with us. He's a spoken word poet and drummer, a novelist, an activist, and a historical archivist. So not keeping busy at all. In 2017, he launched his Missing from History Women of the Underground Railroad project to identify the important role women played in the intricate network of freedom fighters known as the Underground Railroad. He went on to develop those stories through poetry, spoken word, and theater. More recently, TJ's exploration of his family history has led to a multidisciplinary project called Born Enslaved. Welcome, TJ.
Hello, hello, hello. I love the stories. I was thinking, my family, a James Brown record, scratched, like the vinyl is like a real deep cut in the vinyl, and it's just like, hey. I'm pretty sure like that. My family like falls into that spot, which is pretty cool too.
I'd love to see the cover art, the album cover for that. That would be fantastic. Yeah.
Oh wow. You have a very fascinating family history, which you've traced all the way back to 1745. Tell us about the Born Enslaved project, how it's connected to your family history, and how that came about.
Oh, the connection. Everything that I do seems to be connected, and the story just keeps growing and growing. And I try to put a framer on it so I can like produce a finished piece of work, and then like a new tidbit would come. Last night, my cousin sends me a text message at midnight, and he says, I was watching this story about Robert Johnson, like legendary blues player Robert Johnson. He was married to a woman for 1 year called Virginia Travis. She they married in 1929, and then she died in 1930 mysteriously. Nobody knows what happened to her. And I'm like, this happened in Mississippi. I've been linking family to Mississippi. I was like, oh, now I got a whole new little thing to go chase about, So that's kind of my family. You can kind of put the thumb on it, like stories. The reason why I get into this sort of stuff is because the stories, right? Stories are everything. Like if you can imagine like our human collective experience, like a wave going across the ocean, and then that wave being made up of stories. And I've been riding this wave for a couple of years now, and I get the pleasure of being able to, chip away at it right inside my family. My family reunion was just a couple of days ago, so it was stories. I talked to one of the elders, and they just like add a few more shades to the story, and I'm like, oh, this project is never gonna be finished. Like I'm gonna be creating this work for the rest of my life. So the approach that I've been taking lately is drama, like creating pieces of poetry out of these fragmented stories, and then performing them because they're living, like they're alive, and they change every time.
What are some of the favorite ones that you found so far? The ones that really gave you joy?
There's a woman that I still know very little about, but she was called Auntie Strange. This was a woman who arrived in Pennsylvania in Mercer County. My oldest known ancestor founded a freedom town in Pennsylvania, and it was referred to as Liberia. And a lot of folks that were down south, and they were moving there, they were self-liberating, and just like taking those walks, those strides toward freedom. They were landing in this settlement, and there was a woman who was called Auntie Strange. Nobody knows really who she was, where she came from, but the story that follows her is that she had attempted to self-liberate herself 2 times. The first time she got caught, her so-called slave master cut the fingers off of her hands. Oh. This is terrible, right? But it only like motivated her, like I'm gonna get free, and she took off again, and she found her freedom by hiding under a bridge in the water, so the hounds couldn't pick up her scent, and eventually she made it to Liberia. Now, after 1850, when they passed this Fugitive Slave Act, a lot of the folks that were living on that settlement, they shot further north into Canada. My family eventually settled in the North Buxton area, but this woman wouldn't leave. She was like, I'm going to stay here. Like this is my home, and she lived out the rest of her days there, and she's buried on that piece of land right now. She has a cross that sits there, and it says ex-slave across it. There's not a lot of details about her if you start digging for stuff, but that story is so powerful, because that's the story of so many people. Yeah. Like, it doesn't matter who we are, where we came from, which part of the planet we were born on. We have all of these stories, like a collective experience, and then we have like these nuanced experiences that are so fascinating to me that I just can't stop collecting them.
A lot of people just use Ancestry or online records to retrace their family history, but you actually took a couple of journeys back to the places where your family began in North America, at least. How has that affected your storytelling and the work that you're doing now?
I believe taking that approach just helped me to do away with any of the white noise that surrounds an ancestry.com. You know, it could be faulty. It could just be an entertainment site. It could be, it could not be. It's connected to a lot of people, but I thought it very necessary for my personal journey and for the content that I'm collecting to be there, to say, you know what, I did go through Ancestry and it did connect me with a lot of people, but meeting the people who live there and have families that have been there for generations is very important. Like, one of the things that I picked up when I was in Virginia for the first time was a lot of the culture that's there. Like, there's a racism there that's just ingrained. It's so normalized. Like, I, as an outsider looking in, was experiencing people of color who would step off the sidewalk as white folks walked by. Not because they had to, but because that's just the groove. That's the way that it happens out there. And I had to check my privilege because I had the ability to grow up here. I didn't grow up in towns where they had names like Lynchburg, and like, do you look at some of the signs on the roads and you're just thinking, like, we have family that grew up here, surrounded by this, saturated by this. Like, we have our own experience of survival here. They have an experience of survival that is much different, that carries roots that are just different from ours. You know, so to be in that space and to breathe that air and to walk those grounds, to collect those sorts of conversations and to bring them back and to have that inform me and shape the way I hold the information, you know, and the respect that I give that content as I share it with people is extremely important. And it's definitely why I continue to go back. You know, I could have took my pilgrimage to Virginia, you know, and stood upon the land in which the ancestors were enslaved upon, came back, created, you know, pulled that content together, created a product, and put it out there and just washed my hands of it. But we can't. Like, we have this responsibility to do more, all of us. So, yeah, it's with great honor and great pleasure that I get to go back and forth. And, I mean, how lucky is a family that can return home to a beautiful piece of land that was settled by your oldest known ancestor, that was the home to freedom seekers. Like, that's huge. Like, that's all the inspiration and motivation I need to continue these stories. But as I journey through these stories, it broadens, you know, because now I'm not thinking about just the relationship of my ancestors who were enslaved, but what about the narrative of the people who were enslaving other people, and the children that were growing up, the children of the so-called slave master, who were good friends with people who were also enslaved, and then you grow to a certain point where that relationship ends. We talk about, like, generational trauma, these sorts of things. Like, this whole work, Born Enslaved, a Freedom Story, it's really just digging deep into that generational trauma, so I can make sense of my own life and my experience, my father, his brothers and sisters, their parents, and so on and so forth. Because in the Black community, my experience in the Black community, like, we don't tell those stories a lot. You know, I could ask an aunt or uncle, you know, what was it like growing up? And what they have to share is it's not a whole lot. You know, they'll reflect on bits and pieces of high school and people that they knew, but, you know, when we have conversations around generational trauma, what was passed down to you through my grandfather, my grandmother, my great-grandmother, my great-grandfather, like, there's these holes that are there. They're perceived as holes because the content's not there, but it's waiting to be discovered. And I'm like, oh, I'm so turned on by the discovery part of it that I just keep on digging and digging and digging. And every time I do, you know, the ancestors always blessed with something. There's always this new jewel. Like, here's this new piece. Share it. And I'm like, yes, thank you very much. I absolutely will share it.
You're very well known and respected as an activist locally here in Sandwich Town, and I'm hearing a little bit of that. But would you like to elaborate on how your activism is informed by these stories, these jewels from your ancestors, and this writing?
Activism is something that was strange to me when I first happened upon that term in a meaningful way. Now, my grandmother gave birth to 24 children. Like, there was just a certain way that things happened in that family, and I grew up in Sandwich Town. When I started to experience like essential resources leaving that area, houses becoming boarded up, my approach to that was family. Like, I grew up there. You know, my great grandmother, my grandmother's mother on the Smith side of my family. A lot of my cousins and such, they didn't call her grandma. They called her Mrs. Smith. Mrs. Smith. Mrs. Smith. They either had so much respect for her that they called her Mrs. Smith, or they were terrified of her and they had to call her Mrs. Smith. But they would share stories about, she would take a pumpkin pie and she would like cut it into like 50 pieces, and she would like feed the neighborhood with it. I'm like, if my great grandmother could feed a neighborhood with one pie, then we can do better in our neighborhood. And if this is activism, then I'm an activist, I suppose. But this is like the groove of the way that we live. You know, families, they come together, they feed each other. If someone is going without, you give what you can give, and then when they can give, you know, you open up yourself to receive. In 2009 or so, I happened upon this great organization, this great collective called the Windsor Peace Coalition. And I happened upon them because I Googled activism in the city, because I didn't know there was activism in the city. Because certainly in my neighborhood, we didn't call it that. We were like, oh, things are messed up, but we have the cure to it. This is what we're going to do. We didn't call it activism. It was just, this is how we're going to get by. If we're going to feed ourselves, this is what we're going to do. But I Googled Windsor Activism Peace Coalition was the first was the first hit that I got. So I went down to where the market is on Ottawa, and I experienced all of these folks out there who were protesting the war, and I met some beautiful people. 3 days later, I was on a school bus, and we were doing a pilgrimage with migrant workers in Leamington, and the connection they were making was the Underground Railroad experience. So these migrant workers were being introduced, and they were given a tour of all these Underground Railroad monuments from Windsor, Sandwich First Baptist Church, and then we started going into the county, and our last stop was Uncle Tom's Cabin, and then we came back. And I was like, what a time for me to get involved in this, I suppose, community activism. You know, like on the forefront of it was the Underground Railroad. You know, this revolutionary network that is relevant today. You know, like it's relevant today, like right now,
it's a model.
just as it was. So I'm reflecting on the way that my family does stuff, and I was like, that is an Underground Railroad. And as I become more exposed to other people in the community who are being activists, you know, participating in activism, they're also using that model, you know. So this work has informed anything that I'm doing creatively, but also my creativity as an artist and my experience as a person, you know, also inform my activism. Like it's all connected, and everything is branched out of there. You know, this work that I'm doing, you know, concerning my family, is so that my cousins and my nieces and nephews coming up behind me, they already have access to it, and then they can bring it to the next level. It's already there. You know, that's like telling stories is activism. You know, us, you know, having the courage to sit on podcasts and share stories is activism, because the information goes out there. Like we conjure something incredible here, something powerful. We send that energy out into the world, and then it drops all these seeds, and this beautiful garden comes up, and we feed each other with it. So it's so important.
That reminds me of sort of the activism that grew out of the early part of the 20th century around economics and the Great Depression. And a lot of what those organizers did was just go around and tell people stories. That is the most motivating thing. Do you see people respond to you when you start to tell those personal stories? How do they react?
I get a good response, but I mean, the content is struggle, right? Like, most people, they can connect with struggle, and most people that I'm connected to or would find themselves to any of this work, you know, they sympathize with Underground Railroad, chattel slavery, like that is. I've not had a situation where someone was like, why are you still talking about that? You know, and this is something that we see, like this sort of rhetoric online all the time. Why are you still talking about slavery? It's not this person's fault. It's not that person's fault. Get over it. These sorts of things. I've not encountered any of that. And I don't know if it's the style in which the information is being shared. Like, I'm not sure. Like, I don't even know if it's my responsibility to even understand that part of it. But I've received so much love. Like, here in Windsor, Essex County, Kent County, Buxton, Chatham area, across the border. Like, people are usually really interested to know the stories.
Do you find there's a lot of awareness across the border? I work over there, so I spend a lot of time there. That this actually was one of the main areas for Underground Railroad traffic. Do they understand it the same way we do here? Do you feel
In my experience, nope, not at all. I was the first time I went to Virginia on this pilgrimage. It landed me in Jamestown, the Jamestown settlement, and they have a living museum there. And I was having conversations about, you know, my family, what brought me there, and they have no idea about Sandwichtown. Like, they have no idea about Sandwichtown. They might know something about, you know, like Canada being north, like people were heading north and ending up in Canada, but the stories as they were shared and broken down in Fluid Frontier, like they need that textbook. Like, they really need that textbook. Now, with that being said, if you spark that conversation, you can have that conversation there. They're open to the conversation. The last time I was in Virginia, I was in Williamsburg, and I took a walk from Williamsburg to Jamestown, which is a very long walk. And I walked through the woods because I knew the ancestors walked through these woods. You know, so it was necessary for me and the way that I held these stories to also take that walk.
You also wanted to avoid the highway,
And I also wanted to avoid the highway, which at some points I couldn't. At some points I was walking on the highway. But you go into the bookstores there, and there's lots of books, and a lot of the books are very important books, and some of the books you might want to give the side eye a little bit because the telling of the history and 1619 and, you know, 20 odd and Negro, this whole thing, like there's always holes in stories, right? Like I say, like we have this collective experience, but we're all like seeing it from different vantage points. But if you bring up a conversation, like you can have that conversation. What brought me to Jamestown really was there's a Travis estate there, you know. So there were Travises who came over from England, and they were really involved in the military, and they had money and power enough so that they have their own cemetery. And what I'm thinking is there a connection with you owning like some of my family at some point? You know, picking up, like grabbing the pieces of those puzzles. They're it's easier said than done because there's so many versions of history as we experience it. But like you can have that conversation down there. Like I've not had an experience where there was a historian down there that like tried to like shut me down because what I had to say, you know, wasn't in harmony with what they were saying. But there's so much that they don't know or maybe don't really care as far as Sandwichtown's concerned. Sandwich First Baptist Church, But what I do know is that there's a group that comes from New Orleans to the St. Louis First Baptist Church. So there's areas in Louisiana where, they're hip to the game down here, but there's other places that aren't, and I'm sure, I'm not too proud to say there's a ton of stuff I don't know. So I don't have anger at them because they don't have those pieces.
No, but so you find that there's an openness to the story, just not a great awareness everywhere. So,
yeah, and the opportunity to bring my content there and share. When I was in Williamsburg the last time, I got to spend time on the campus of William and Mary, and they have a beautiful theater program there, and they have a beautiful theater. And just in conversation, they said, "Oh, that's some of Virginia's history. When it's finished, you should come back, and maybe we can put it on stage here."
Wow.
Because they give a damn about their history down there, so much so that they recreate it. Now, it's not like everybody's history, it's a certain version of history, but I mean, they're into it so much that they've recreated that space. And if you've not had the opportunity to go to Williamsburg, go there, because it's pretty trippy. One second you're walking in the 21st century, and then you're 300 years back in time.
Speaking of performance, you're a pretty rare artist who is able to perform both the drumming and the poetry. And you do them pretty well simultaneously. It's awesome.
Thank you.
Which comes more easily to you, the drumming or the poetry?
You know what? I guess I'm what we could consider a brave performer, because in my mind I don't know if I'm there for either of them. I just kind of sit down and go with it, and sometimes it works out. Sometimes it doesn't work out in my mind, but people in the audience, they appreciate creativity, so they're like, "Oh, that was good." And in my head, I'm thinking, "Oh, I don't know." But I've been doing poetry since I was just a young person, So it was definitely the written word before it was the drum. I didn't pick the drum up till I was probably in my mid-20s, and I picked it up because I don't want to call it accident, because I feel as though my grandmother up in heaven was sending this drum to me, and it finally reached me. But I had a neighbor that lived across the street, and he ordered a West African drum that's called a djembe off of eBay or one of these things, and it wasn't what he was anticipating. So he was going to put it on Kijiji and sell it, and I was like, "Well, I'm looking for an instrument to accompany my spoken word, so let me play around with it for a week or so, and if there's a good connection, I'll buy it from you." And I bought this drum from him. I gave him $100 for my very first djembe, and it wasn't an authentic drum at all. It was a piece of furniture. It was a decorative piece of furniture. But the connection that I had with that instrument immediately is nothing I couldn't find the words in poetry to express what that connection was, so I have to play it. I have to play the drum. There's things that just can't be said. There's things that are circling around in my mind that they don't come to my tongue in a way that's powerful enough to pay the proper respect to what I'm trying to get across. And that's when the drum comes in. The drum is this beautiful device of teleportation, right? You hold a drum in your hand and you're like, this drum was built in a cooperative in Mali from a tree that could be 1,000,000 years old, could be 500,000 years old. The stories that this drum has, and all I have to do is play upon the skin of it, and it will share these stories. I've been on this planet for less than 40 years. There's nothing that I can say that the drum can't say, The poetry is nice because it provides me with an opportunity to speak, somewhat intelligently about whatever it is I need to convey. But the drum, you hit that drum and it's generations of people. It's evolution of humanity. Whenever we play the drum, we say, we're honoring this tree. We're honoring the animal that lays upon it and the hands of the drum maker, because those hands of the drum maker, those are generational hands. They picked up where their ancestor left off, and this goes back hundreds and hundreds of years for the djembe, because the djembe is less than 1,000 years old. So to answer that question, I don't want to take credit for the drum and what that brings to a space. So I'll say that the poetry comes more natural to me, because as a being, that's an energy that I can handle. I can handle that energy, but the drum is, it's like saying I can put an ocean in a cup. That cup of water, it can't try to express itself as an ocean, and what an ocean has experienced, because it's just a piece, right? It's just a little piece of it.
Has drumming actually influenced the way that you write poetry in any way? Has it changed your sense of time signature or rhythm or anything of that nature?
No, I drum to the rhythm of the cadence that I think I was born with. Certain people walk a certain way and they speak a certain way, and that's the way they were influenced by, their mothers and their fathers and their families, and the music that you listened to and the things you were exposed to. So when I picked up the drum, to fill in those and fill the spaces of the cadence that was handed down to me. So when I play in a lot of spaces, a lot of folks are like, "Oh, I never heard a drum rhythm like that before." Or when the especially like our local Nigerian community, they're always so nice to invite me to play the drum, and I'm like, "You want me to play the drum?" I was like, "Certainly, you have like some brothers and some sisters from Nigeria that can play you a Nigerian rhythm." They're like, "Oh, we want you to play." I was like, "I'll play." I was like, "But I play to my own heartbeat. I play the way that I play. So if you want, if that's the invitation, then by all means, I'm gonna bring that to the table." But yeah, it was the rhythm that was born in me, expressed through the drum.
As I listen to you talk about the two art forms, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I'm hearing that the poetry tips a little bit more towards the intellectual side and the drum tips a little bit more to the emotional side. Is that kind of how you express it?
I think it balances where necessary. Mm-hmm. I lean on the drum if I can't get something across. If it's not coming out for whatever reason, I lean on the drum, but if that's not the case, the drum will provide a certain support for the words. And in the moment, I can't intellectualize this in the moment, because I jump into it. It's not pre-rehearsed or anything like that. I'll go through the book and I'll say, this is the collection of poems that I'm going to share today, and then as I go through the work, I'll sit down with the drum, and then it kind of figures itself out. There isn't a set rhythm or a planned performance. It's very much improvised, I suppose. Mm-hmm. But I like to think that the drum is also the poetry. Those stories are there. I've been working with some young people in a summer program, and we've created what's called experimental drum theater. The things that you can't express with words, drum that stuff out, and I really think that frames whatever my art form is.
So it's its own language.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Very cool.
Yeah. You've been involved in 2 recent book collection projects, gathering materials to create an Afro-indigenous library. at Bloomfield House. And then you've also been working in partnership with friends at the Essex County Black Historical Research Society to gather books for the library at the Southwest Regional Detention Centre. Do you want to give us a quick overview about those projects and what they mean to you?
Yeah, I'll start with the Afro-indigenous library. I frequent our local libraries. We have some pretty good content in our collection, you know. But in Sandwichtown, there's Sandwichtown is so historic, and there is a history section that's geared towards Sandwichtown Underground Railroad, but it's there, but it's not that expansive. It's not that expansive, and it's a public library, and you get what you get from a public library. But if you see a hole somewhere, you try to fill it. So through social media, I just sent a shout out saying, at the time we had a classroom at the Sandwich Teen Action Group. I was like, we have space here, we have bookshelves. If we can collect enough books, we'll have access to things that people might not get access to. Like there's so many voices speaking from a lot of many perspectives in regards to like Afro history, Black history. Even the language that we use and the way that we identify ourselves is different, and people are going to find themselves in there somewhere. Like if you open up a book and they refer to you as an African Canadian or Afro Canadian, you're like, well, I don't think I'm that, so I'm not going to read this book, and then you lose all this content. But then there might be another author that has a lot of the same content, but they identify in a way that you also relate to, and then you get to take it in. So the whole purpose of that was just to make sure that there was a collection of these books in one place that was accessible to people to get to. And I thank you, Irene, for helping so much all the time. Like I send like a bat signal up, and like many aspects of my life with many people in many places, I'm never disappointed on this end. So I appreciate that very much. And that ties into us having the opportunity to start the other project at the Southwest Detention Center. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were invited to visit for Black History Month, and I got the opportunity to share some of my story and such, and Irene was sharing the jewels that you carry with you so graciously and humbly. But there was a brother in there who, he said they don't have access to the sorts of books that he could see himself in, for whatever reason, I try to keep myself in a position where I'm not pointing fingers at situations that I don't know a lot about, but the answer to that is to bring books. Right? If these books aren't here, what can we do to fill these shelves? What are your rules? So, books have been collected and dropped off there, and I believe books are continuing to be collected because I've received some emails saying I have a box of books. Where can I drop them off to? And I think that's fantastic, because that's a room full of people that had a conversation. What came out of that conversation was, despite our situation here, we want to read. We want to expand our minds. What can we do to help?
What kind of books go well in that situation, in that particular program?
Books that are soft cover, books that don't have staples, books that don't have content in it that may anger or discriminate or cause any sort of friction, I suppose, in that space. Books are powerful vehicles that can stir anyone's mind in any direction. And when you are in a situation where you are, I don't know if saying forced is the right word, but forced is the word that I'm going to use. When you're forced to live with a large group of people over an extended period of time, you want to have, a a certain energy of a certain harmonious energy there, and I can respect that because I don't want people to get hurt, especially not because of books and information, learning, these sorts of things. And we know that books can revolutionize because I've been revolutionized by books, and I know the way that books have made me feel while I was reading them and the energy that I put out because of that. And I wasn't in a situation where I was, locked up in a space. So I can totally understand why there's these certain rules, but the most important thing is that books are there, and books continue to make their way there. So high five Irene and the everyone that's involved in this.
High five to you as well, and it has been really beautiful to hear all the feedback about how people are yearning to emancipate themselves from mental slavery, for sure. Recently, we had the pleasure of attending the Words event, which was hosted by the Windsor Storytellers Collective, and we had a chance to record some of that. Can you tell us about the Windsor Storytellers Collective and what that event was all about?
The Windsor Storytellers Collective, it's a collective of unionized artists who collaborate with one another. It's artists of multi-discipline, just coming together in an environment that lends itself to improv and to experimental performance. And the idea is just to present people with an experience that is unlike anything else. So at the Words event, there was myself and another poet and a DJ, and the plan was myself and the other poet were going to bring in a collection of poems, and we weren't going to share what those poems were with each other. We were just going to bounce poems off of each other and see if they got into the groove with one another, and we were going to put the cherry on the cake by having a DJ there. And the DJ was going to collaborate with us by, scratching vinyl or picking out samples of music that would go on with the rest of the event. It's an idea that I had. I tend to get these ideas all the time, and I just work to materialize it to figure out if I liked it or not. And if oh, that was good, we should do that again. And if it was a thumbs down, I was like, the energy wasn't right there, but we can go back to the drawing board and start over again. So the next event that we're planning with the Windsor Storytellers Collective, and anybody out there that's listening that would like to be part of this Windsor Storytellers Collective, contact me at teajai.travis@live.ca, and we can set up a meeting because it's open to all artists. You have to join our union to participate, but it's a good thing because we push worker solidarity. The next show that's coming up is called Table Manners, where we'll be experimenting with conversation. So just as an example, we might have two speakers having a conversation with each other who speak different languages. Back and forth, and just seeing the way that vibes, because we see that in the world all the time. We see people walking down the street who have a mother tongue that is not English, and we still make it happen. But the conversation could also be somebody with a drum and somebody with a violin, just kind of going back and forth. So that's the sort of flavor that you would get from a Windsor Storytellers Collective production.
Well, this has been an extraordinary conversation. Thank you so much for coming, Teajai Travis.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. And the space is beautiful. Shout out to Gertrude. Yay.
Thanks for joining us. Look for more episodes of All Right in Sin City wherever you listen to podcasts, or check out our website, allrightinsincity.com. For information and announcements of new podcasts, sign up to our email list or follow us on Facebook and Twitter.